the most succinct way to say it is, the way that we hear quoted so often from Ernest Holmes is that, there's a power in this universe greater than you are, and you can use it.
Hmm.
And that resonates for me. What we think, all creation begins in our mind. So what we think and what we believe is possible shifts what is possible. And when we let go of our own ego controlling ways and open up to that, the ideas come, the ways to make manifest what it is that we want to experience. And I also think that he called it the science of mind, because he never wanted people to take their word for it or just hold this as some sort of dogma. He's like, try it, put these things to work, and see how it works for you, experiment. And it's not the same for everybody and how we do it. And so that's what I get. Everything begins in mind, and so once we are intentional about what we want and how we go about getting it, the universe shows us the way, shows us the steps, and brings those opportunities to us in order to live a life of more fulfilled life.
Well, welcome once again to Raising the Consciousness of Humanity. I am super excited today because I have Reverend Chris Lahiff, who is the spiritual director of the Center for Spiritual Living, Cape Coral, Florida. I have listened to many of his messages there. He's really motivating and inspirational person. And today we are going to be talking about the science of mind and creating meaning and purpose in what we do. Reverend Chris, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure.
Well, this is exciting. So I'm glad we're being able to share this moment together. And I kind of wanted to lead off with for those people who don't know you, tell us a little bit about, your journey. What brought you to this point of serving as the Reverend at the Center for Spiritual Living in Cape Coral?
Well, without taking up all of the time that we have set aside, because that could be a long story, I'll try to give the truncated version.
Yeah.
I guess ultimately, I had an experience in the late 90s that showed me, that God, the universe exists. And that was something that just opened me up. Before that, I had a faith that there was something because of my Catholic upbringing. I believed that there was something bigger, but it didn't necessarily feel like that, what I was taught in Catholicism. But then, I had an experience in the late 90s that, broke me open. And interestingly enough, it was my kind of the crazy life that I had grown up with. I considered myself a partier, and I took pride in that. And that was my, unfortunate kind of, or fortunate, however you want to look at it, experience. And so even though I had that experience, I still was really curious about more of the universe, but I was not curious enough to leave the partying behind. And that was how I spilled my time. And so it was till, it was around 2008 that I realized we had to leave that lifestyle behind. And after a year and a half almost of, not being out partying all the time, of leaving it, living an alcohol and drug-free life, that I was found myself like kind of really depressed, and it didn't make sense to me. I felt like I should have been like really happy and feeling good about everything. And so at that point, I did some questioning and tried to figure out what I could do. And it was a Wayne Dyer book that I had bought over 10 years ago that I'd never opened, that I pulled it back out, started reading. And he said in there, if your life is not great, if it's not how you want it to be, the number one thing he recommended was you start a meditation practice, like a program, like immediately. And he recommended anything by Jose Silva. And so that's what I did. I tracked down some stuff on Jose Silva and started meditating, and things started shifting. I recognized, how I was perceiving life. The story I was telling myself about my life was creating my experience. And that's when, everything kind of shifted really rapidly. And it was shortly after then that I found Centers for Spiritual Living it was Mile High Church in Lakewood, Colorado. And all the beliefs that I had had about, what God or the universe is, all that bigger stuff, everything that I felt like I believed when I walked into Mile High Church, sitting there, hearing the message come from the stage, I was like, that's it. That's what I always felt. And I'm looking around, and if you're not familiar with Mile High Church, it's huge, and the sanctuary holds 1,500 people. And I'm looking around, and I'm just flabbergasted that there's this many other people that actually believe the same ideas about the universe or God that I did. And so, I knew I was home, and that's when I started getting like kind of really structured about my seeking, and life really started to hold a lot more meaning than it ever had before in my life.
Wow. Okay. Well, so I'm always interested in what brings people through, and you mentioned Wayne Dyer. Of course, there's a lot of people that relate to Wayne Dyer, and obviously that's very much in line with Center for Spiritual Living.
Yep.
So
Yep.
you mentioned also in your title, Science of Mind and creating meaning and purpose in what we do. For those people that don't know what science of mind means, can you give us an understanding of what that maybe that term means and relate it to the topic?
Sure. Yeah. So I think, the most succinct way to say it is, the way that we hear quoted so often from Ernest Holmes is that, there's a power in this universe greater than you are, and you can use it.
Hmm.
And that resonates for me. What we think, all creation begins in our mind. So what we think and what we believe is possible shifts what is possible. And when we let go of our own ego controlling ways and open up to that, the ideas come, the ways to make manifest what it is that we want to experience. And I also think that he called it the science of mind, because he never wanted people to take their word for it or just hold this as some sort of, dogma. He's like, try it, put these things to work, and see how it works for you, experiment. And it's not the same for everybody and how we do it. And so that's, what I get. It's everything begins in mind.
Mm,
And so once we are intentional about what we want and how we go about getting it, the universe shows us the way, shows us the steps, and brings those opportunities to us in order to live a life of, more fulfilled life.
nice. Well, you described it perfectly.
Okay.
And it's not just the science, it's a philosophy and it's a book.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
It's
happen
yeah.
to have mine right here, so I don't know if anybody can see it. It's a rather thick book as well.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I actually have a friend from Wyoming who runs a podcast who he's the only person I've ever talked to that read that book cover to cover, and he's done it at least twice, which is he's never stepped foot in the side of a center for spiritual living. He lives in
Interesting.
LA. Yeah, he's like lots of people have told him to, go check out Agape, and it's like sometime maybe I will, but he's just like an avid reader, and he's like, yeah, it's a good book. I read it a couple times, just cover to cover, which, you're a practitioner in the philosophy, and so we've taken classes, and so there's a lot of, skipping around, and you draw on different sections, and
Yeah,
even I was gonna say, and even Edward Villion gives steps at the beginning so that if you follow this 365-day thing that you will have read the whole book. But even that, he doesn't, go in a straight order. It's, jumping all around. And so,
sure.
yeah.
Sure. And I find that actually probably most people who have picked up that book, and that book was written a while ago, Ernest Holmes no longer is alive, but that most people who pick up that book, it resonates some sense of truth to them. And many cases, it's up to that individual wherever, whether it takes them further and obviously to a center for spiritual living or like a path that you took, or reading it just in your own leisure at your own time and your own pace.
Yeah, it's many things to many people for sure.
Oh yeah. So expand a little bit with that topic of science of mind and also the topic of in creating meaning and purpose in what we do. How do you use the science of mind philosophy or the science of mind science to expand into this meaning and purpose of what we do?
Um, I think primarily it's, asking what we want, how do we want to experience a greater life, and, setting that intention, and knowing that, there is always greater expansion, greater experience. And so, becoming clear on that, and then asking, asking for help from the universe or for your higher power, whatever you want to call it, that word. I know, some people get triggered by the word God, but, and, I did too. If I was thinking about some controlling man, sitting up in the clouds that's always judging and condemning and punishing. But, like my definition of God is definitely expanded into, you know,
Sure.
it's everything it is. And, so really, I think, the science of mind, what we hold in our intentions and beliefs and believe that it's possible and believe that the universe is here to help us, not hinder us, opens us up to greater experiences.
Nice. And do you have any personal experience that you would share or a story to relate to with that?
Oh my gosh. Absolutely. Um, trying to think of how to relate this in alignment
Yeah.
with the subject. Maybe I'll just kind of describe how I got onto this notion of creating more meaning and purpose.
Yeah.
And so what happened at that time? So it was when I was about 16 months alcohol free, and I've found myself in that funk that I mentioned earlier. And it was, I've experienced depression a lot in my life, off and on. It would go through cycles, and it was almost like clockwork. But this time it was darker and deeper than I'd ever experienced before, and it didn't make sense. And around the same time, I my occupation, I was waiting tables. I'd spent
Mhm.
most of my adult life bartending and waiting tables. It, fit nicely with living that party lifestyle. Could sleep in late, be out, the rest. But
Yeah.
um, I was waiting tables, and somebody, the place where I was working at, it was good. We made decent money, but it was all about volume. So it was hard work, carrying huge, heavy trays. And, somebody that was working there, and you were standing around joking like we do. And somebody said, if I'm still waiting tables when I'm 30, somebody shoot me. And at that point, I believe, somewhere around like 35.
Oh boy.
And yeah. And I was like, oh my God. And then I started thinking about it. And I'm like, yeah, if I'm 35, if I get older, like this is my best shot at making, a living. And it's already like it's hard on my body. And so I had this thought that like it's all downhill from here. Like,
Mhm.
wow, like this is it. My life's over. I was part of that, funk that was contributing to me. I felt like I blew all my opportunities and,
Mhm.
wasted college money and just had nothing to show for it. And
Yeah.
but then through, like once I started meditating, what came to me, and was something that I'd learned before, and it was also again in the Wayne Dyer book that just talked about perception. How you perceive the life that you're experiencing is how you're going to experience it.
Mhm.
And so I started like shifting, like actually maybe this job can bring me, right now it fits the bill. It gives me freedom. So what do I want to do? That's when I realized like I'm 35. My life's not over. I've got easily another 50 years to go. That's not, you know, out of the realm of possibility. So
Yeah.
what do I want to do? Like I couldn't believe the way that I was thinking such dead end thoughts that, and so that was like the kind of the next shift. And so then it was when I realized, like if I'm going to be doing this for a while, how can I make the most of it?
Mhm.
At that point, we were just getting to the place. I don't remember where it was in there, but when we started, trying to have children, my wife and I, but I knew that this afforded me like some freedom, to have that job. So then I just had to ask, like, okay, so if I'm going to do this, how do I make the best of it?
Mhm.
And asking that question, in the infinite mind, it starts opening up possibilities. I had one other friend who he got sober about a year after me, or around that same, about a year after. And he was kind of in the same boat. And I saw him post something on Facebook, and he's like, well, I guess I might as well just accept it. I'm going to have to wait tables for the rest of my life. And then he's like, does anybody know of any openings out there?
Mhm.
And he just like, left it up to the universe and put it out there. And I was like, oh my gosh, like rather than just like leaving it at the whim of the universe, we have some power to kind of create what we want. And so I was like, so I've heard all my life, people that say, well, you can make decent money waiting tables. And so I
Yeah.
had to ask, like, okay, so what kind of jobs? Where are those jobs where we can make money? And and then as soon as I like asked that question, like my manager was talking on the phone with a friend of theirs who manages this steakhouse, and got off the phone and says, "Oh, it'd be great to work over there. Their servers are making, $300 a night." And I was like, "Well, that sounds more in line
Yeah,
alignment with what I would like to create." And so then just starting to ask those questions, how do I get into those places? And so that just really started opening up the possibility.
yeah.
Uh, yeah. And before that, we're like, what really got me to the place of acceptance with what I was doing for a living at that time, was I asked, like, okay, so I still have, I'm 35, my life's not over. I got a lot to do. What do I ultimately want to do in life?
Mm,
And, I'm just thinking about like different occupations, different careers, things I could study. But what I ended up like landing on was like, I really just want to serve. I want to serve
nice.
humanity. And then it was like ironic and made me laugh. Like, and that's my job. I'm a server. That's what I'm doing. So like I was already doing what I wanted to do. And
That's
so
perfect.
it was. And
Yeah,
then,
that's perfect, Reverend Chris. And it's you hit the nail on the head. It's not the occupation, it's our perception of the
mhm,
occupation. It's our perception of life. It's our perception of ourself.
yeah,
And there's different states you could be in gratitude for what you're doing, regardless of where you are. And at the same time, the inspiration of creating something new, whatever that can be, I think that's true too.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so it shifted, how I did my job because once I shifted it, like I want to serve others,
Yeah,
then like the way that I did my job, and in a minute, I can try to relate it to other occupations, but for this example, you know, I don't know if you ever waited tables, but sometimes it can be challenging. Sometimes people come at you who aren't in their best state of minds or, in their best moments of their life, and they can treat servers like really poorly. And, up to that point, I was, sometimes not necessarily surly, but sometimes I would react with, when people would give me fire, I would fight fire with fire and just kind of react and creating this thing. But once I had that epiphany, like, no, this is what I want to do. I want to serve. I want to, everybody that comes in front of me, I want them to leave feeling better than they did when they came in. That was kind of my end goal. And so then it just, shifted how I showed up. When people are giving me vitriol, I would honestly just like, how can I serve without
yeah,
necessarily saying that, but just my presence, trying to really discern like what is it that they want? What do they need? How can I deliver that? And not taking anything personal. It was, also that huge shift, but just, really asking like, okay, so how can I serve each individual that came in front of me? How do I serve my coworkers? How can I be a positive presence here so that when people see me, they feel better than before I came in when we all leave. And it was pretty amazing how I saw, work environments shift and, work relationships and the places that I got to work, the people I got to meet, it
nice.
shifted pretty drastically. Yeah.
Well, and to your point, yeah, I did work for a little bit of my life, like in a restaurant and waiting on tables for a little bit,
Hmm.
maybe not to the degree that you have, but what you shared was regardless of what people are there, when you approach a table, how you're being treated, still treating them with love,
Yeah.
still treating them with how you can bring better service to them.
Yeah.
Reverend Chris,
Absolutely.
that principle is true probably regardless of what occupation you're in or relationship, and it's relative to relationships too. It's sometimes we don't always get treated with love, but we can be loved back in that moment.
Yeah. Absolutely. And there's power in it, it's amazing how just what you put out there comes back. And yeah, I think you're right. Like any other field, any occupation, just asking, how can I create more, more love, more abundance, more flow, more connection in this interaction, in this transaction, in everything that we do. And
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Well, is in so expanding on meaning and purpose. What about somebody out there listening right now that is in a maybe a low place or in a low funk in their life, and they're just like things aren't working out and they just don't feel they have meaning and purpose. I mean, what would you share with that person listening now to how can they find meaning and purpose?
Mm, mm. So, like the first thing when somebody is low is I like to remind people that, that's it's natural that we go through those ups and downs and
Hmm.
that it will indeed get better again at some point. So, never lose hope. Um, and, you know, at that same time, like learning to be with it, you know, ac acceptance, surrender, in the moment, like, okay, rather than just such strong fighting against it. I'm just like, okay, just observe it, like acknowledge, like right now, things kind of suck. So what can I do? This is what I am experiencing, for whether I like it or not. That's where I'm at. And so leaning into just allowing ourselves to experience it, let it sit with it. And then as we do, being still and just starting to ask those questions like, okay, so what would I rather experience? What would be ideal? Where am I maybe, you know, losing track of what's important in my life? And then,
Hmm.
and, you know, so all like this idea of like our meaning and purpose, it's part of a book that's been percolating in my head and in my notes for a long time. But the idea is that it doesn't matter where we are, like, what our occupation is, or even, like it could be post occupation, it could be in retirement and, and hobbies and how you spend the majority of your time ultimately is like what we can bring our enlightenment to or get enlightenment from. And so, just wherever we're at, knowing that we can make those shifts now, like, small shifts now open up the world of possibilities. It was, along the lines of like enlightenment for the working person or the working man, enlightenment for the
Nice.
working person, that when you're living paycheck to paycheck and this, it feels like a dead end and it feels like there's no hope out there, kind of going along the ideas of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. How do
Hmm.
you try to seek that, self-actualization when you're just in that bottom rung, just barely trying to, meet your survival needs? It's hard, so how are you
Sure.
going to be out pursuing enlightenment when you're in survival mode? Um, but absolutely, like you can begin exactly where you are. And you may not be able, I'm gonna like reference Rhonda Byrne in The Secret. When The Secret
Hmm.
came out and it made like the law of attraction, like mainstream, everybody's like, I just gotta think good thoughts and then I'm gonna magically manifest everything in my life.
Hmm.
And then after like 2 months of thinking good thoughts and they're still kind of not in much of a different place yet, they gave up, like, it doesn't work. None of this works. And so I just give up. But realizing those we're overcoming sometimes decades of erroneous thought. It doesn't always shift. You can't turn the cruise liner on a
Sure.
dime. It takes time. And when you're living a job that you're living, paycheck to paycheck, and you can't necessarily just quit and go find that other job. But what you can do is starting right where you are, just like, okay, I'm bringing meaning and purpose to it. And as you get into a meditation practice and learn how
Hmm.
to still your mind and create, sharper focus and open up to greater ideas and intuition, when you're bringing that to your occupation and just going in from a place of heart and truly wanting to serve, you start performing better. You
Hmm.
start, you don't have that same negative resistance that you had to, like,
Hmm.
which, creates, a bad attitude, which makes people not want to be around you. It doesn't open doors for you. But all of a sudden, when you start like showing up in a different way, it's amazing how opportunities start showing up for you. And so I guess you'll get back to your question in a long-winded kind of way. It's just opening up that there is something greater than you and you can use it. So start asking those questions. What do I want to experience? What would be better? And how can I, let go of my resistance, go within and just find, you know, having faith that there is
Hmm.
something that can help me here. And when I draw on it, you know, seems like magic, really.
Nice. And I'm excited for when your book comes out.
Yeah, it's a ton of notes right now, and I'm still
Well,
not exactly sure how it's gonna ever go, but yeah,
you've dropped
thank
a lot of gems right there. So it just in that a little bit of sharing, I heard, of course, these things don't cover up your emotions. It's okay to
you.
feel low. It's okay to feel out of place. It's okay. That I think is huge because sometimes we just start, you know, trying to go into these positive affirmations and they're like, well, it doesn't work. And yet part of that is being able to be self-aware, and it's okay to feel if you're not feeling good, it's okay to feel those emotions and not
Yeah.
shame yourself for that. So I like the fact that you said that, and what you were sharing too almost sound like you've talked a couple of times now about meditation, about being still and
Mhm.
the value in that. And you've also talked about appreciation or gratitude in different words, that how you express that. To a person that actually has never really put that into practice, well, first of all, meditation. There's a lot of people out there that probably say, I tried it, I can't meditate.
Right.
Do you have any tips for, how do you meditate? What would you share? What would be helpful for that individual that wants to bring either meditation or gratitude into their life?
Yeah, I think, one of the big things is setting that intention to meditate is like, 75% of the challenge right there is just like, okay, I think there's infinite ways of doing it, but I think one of the most important things and one of the things that I hear so often, I really like mantra meditation, like
Mhm,
transcendental meditation, and just like, having a mantra or a word that you just repeat in your head, or maybe you stare at a candle, kind of like an object, some object or a phrase or a word, and that, you just bring your attention to it, even the breath.
mhm,
And then as you're doing that, and then those thoughts come up, you start thinking again about, like, the laundry list, the things that you have to do tomorrow, that thing that happened this morning that irritated you, or for me it's usually that whole list of things that I have to do that just like, I still gotta do that. But where like people are like, I can't meditate because I keep thinking about all these other things, but not realizing like that's the win. That is mindfulness. When you realize you're thinking about something else, like right there, you just did it. You became aware of what your mind was doing.
mm,
So, that's meditation, for me, is that when I'm focusing on something, as soon as I recognize that I'm no longer focusing on that, that's a win. And I get right back. Oh, okay. So I'm just going to gently draw my attention back and I'm going to focus on it again. And as we do that over and over, you get longer periods where you're focused and on your thing, and don't beat yourself up. I mean, that is the practice of learning how to control our minds instead of our minds controlling us. Yeah, it's natural for our minds to wander all over the place, and that's, not a bad thing. And what's a really good thing is when you notice it, because that's where you own
mhm.
your power. So I guess,
Nicely
really just,
said.
yeah, just recommend just trying it. Just try something,
Yeah.
even listen to, I love binaural beats. So even like when my mind's wandering, I still feel like I'm getting, brain entrainment. It's still providing, you know, growth in my mind and better
Yeah.
control. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Trying binaural beats or what you share kind of was trying different ways.
Yeah. Yeah. See what works for you.
See what works for you. The mantra I like. What mantra do you do a mantra like on the in breath and then one on the out breath, or what is there a a favorite mantra of Reverend Chris?
Well, sometimes, I quite often, like, if there's something that I want to experience in my life, so I could just be like, I want to experience more peace. And so I'll just breathe in peace and I'll breathe out peace. I had,
Nice.
when you go through the transcendental meditation, um, program, they give you a mantra, but you're not
Mhm.
allowed to share it. And so, out of honoring of what that tradition is, I won't say what that is, but I can also let people know that you can track down some of those if you wanted to. That would apply for you because
Sure.
there's a formula and it's based on like when you do your training and that. But anyway, um, so yeah, but I do like what you're talking about, like breathing something in, like maybe you're breathing in peace and then breathing out um acceptance or
Hmm.
love. I'm going to breathe in peace and be at peace, and when I exhale, I'm just going to breathe love out into the world and just repeating that peace and love, peace and love.
Yeah.
And I believe words have a vibration, thoughts, like
Hmm.
really more thoughts have a vibration, so the feeling that it generates within us, and just even like when you're in a deep funk. You mentioned earlier, like sometimes like we use affirmations, but when you're in a deep funk and you don't really believe it,
Yeah.
it can be challenging. And so trying to, learn how to tweak those affirmations into something that makes sense instead of like, everything is great. I am financially abundant now. Like it, but saying in the back of your mind, like, no, I know what's in our bank account. That's not true. And so we're not necessarily getting on that
Yeah.
affirmation, but creating it, in a way like I am changing directions to living a more abundant life, because like just right there, while you're saying that thought, you are literally changing your direction. And so maybe that's something that's a little more believable. But going off of that tangent there, like with the mantra, like there is something to it of just repeating, like the word peace over and over again, that
Hmm.
it kind of seeps in and it can help generate, a physical feeling of peace in your body, just to alleviate some of that anxiety,
Yeah.
tension, and
Yeah. And it's I think it was Joseph Murphy in The Power of the Subconscious Mind, where he shares an example where one of the persons that he was working with couldn't say I am peace or I think that I think it was wealthy. But I whatever it was, they couldn't say that, but he said get rid of the I am, just say the word because there's a vibration within the word
mm,
wealth. There's a vibration in the word peace. And so even if you can't claim that that's the truth now, or like you shared, which is I am open to the more possibility of achieving wealth or abundance, or I am open to the more possibility of feeling peace. That's possible. That's kind of baby stepping it in a way of getting a person into that understanding of acceptance and feeling. And so, yeah, I think you're absolutely right about each individual has to play around with a little bit and feel
yeah,
the word because the word abundance has a different feeling than the word wealth. Somebody might say, "Well, I don't feel wealthy," but maybe all I can see that all my needs are met in a way that I'm feel I can feel abundant. Maybe I can't feel wealthy. So yeah, I
yeah,
I think what you shared there was really important.
yeah, yeah. I want to point out something that you said, that you said play around with it. I
Yeah,
think that I think life is meant to be playful and joyous, and yeah, we have the hard moments and stuff, but that, just is part of that full, rich experience. But sometimes we take it way too serious. So play with it. Yes, absolutely. Have fun.
yeah. I think it was
Mhm.
Mike Julia that said he said I have a serious problem. Like when you think of serious problem, being too serious. And
Yeah,
that is,
absolutely. It's
and you're
easy
right.
to do. It can feel too serious. It can feel overwhelming. It can feel like, you know, that the consequences could be dire. If you don't pay your bills and you end up out there on the street, that can cause you to have serious feelings. But at the same time, like in that idea that you just had of abundance, all throughout my life, somehow, some way, things have always worked out. I'm here. I'm alive. I've
Yeah,
gotten through everything before. So I'm pretty sure I'll get through everything after this until the one ultimate thing that nobody gets through. And, that's when we make our transition from this physical world into whatever comes next.
sure.
Other than that, you know, we deal with it when we get there and somehow we get through things. And so let's let go of, fear, doom, and worry and just have fun. and just open up, what are the possibilities?
Enjoy. Have fun
Yeah,
with it. Nice. And
excellent.
also, I want to add too to the audience that's listening, if they're looking for an opportunity for meditation in a group setting, correct? There is that opportunity every Sunday at your center, whether in person or online. They can actually be part of the meditation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we do meditation, at 10 o'clock before our Eastern time, before our service. But, it's another form of meditation, guided meditation. So yeah, you can absolutely come experience it, at our center or online through your YouTube account. As we do it live and all, of course, all the past recordings. But there's so much. I mean, that's what's really cool right now. Like when I in '08 even, trying to get into meditation, and it was, you know, the book recommended anything by Jose Silva, and so I found some stuff, but just the difference between 2008 and now, like it's amazing how much, how many resources are out there that, I mean, there's infinite. When I say there's infinite forms of meditation, like you now have access to infinite forms. I'm a big fan of Insight Timer as well. And so on there
Hmm.
you can find anything that you like, and it's a free app to get on. You can pay for their subscription and get, greater access to more courses and stuff. But just the free version, it just opens up whatever you like. There's meditation music if you just want to sit and listen to meditation music, or brown noise, or like we talked about earlier, binaural beats,
Yeah.
and you can binaural beats to create, whether it's alpha stage or delta, or even like gamma, if you really like want to get focused into your work and creating, like it's
Hmm.
infinite. And then guided meditations that can be really good if you can just, it's almost like following a story, just sitting down and listening to it and letting it take your mind where it goes, and can open up and create fields. So there's, yeah, infinite possibilities. And what we do at our center is usually a form of, guided meditation that
Yeah.
lines up with what our talk is going to be about for the day. It's always amazing how, like, the person that leads the meditation doesn't know what the person's going to say. They just have a general idea of what the theme is. And it's really amazing how, like, the meditation that they bring in fits perfectly. And then, there's somebody that does a reading before the talk happens. And the same thing, like they don't connect and talk and say, hey, this is what I'm going to talk about, use this reading. We just know the general theme, and the person finds the reading that works just right. And then, we have the Big Low Band at the Center for Spiritual Living in Cape Coral. Same thing. They plan their music and they rehearse, on Thursday night. And it never ceases to amaze me when I'm sitting there hearing the meditation before the service, hearing the reading, hearing the songs that the Big Love Band chose, and following along with the lyrics. It always just makes me smile. Like that was my whole talk. Like everything that just happened there is everything that I planned to say today. Just the way that, the science of mind teaches that there's really only one consciousness, one mind that we are all using. So the thoughts that come to us, they're not generated in our brain. Our brain just tunes us into those thoughts. And when we are still and we're coming from a place of presence and a place of, belief that we have access to that bigger thing, um, we tap in. And this is where, like telepathy, intuition,
Hmm.
that synchronicities, when we are doing our practices and reminding ourselves of what we are, it's where, like, Carl Jung, really talked about that synchronicity. Like you start seeing things in the outer world that reflect what's going on in your inner world.
Hmm.
Like that's the synchronicity. And it's amazing when you see like a band and, the meditation guide, that all these different ideas all just sync up perfectly. And you're onto something when you're tapped into that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. No, I love how that organically comes together.
Yeah.
And whether it's the lyrics in the song that the Big Love Band is sharing, or the reading, it just blends together so perfectly. And I've seen that even happen, of course, when you're up there giving your messages, how everything was just like perfect. And in my mind saying, did Reverend Chris pick all that? But like you shared, no, it's something that just blossomed because everybody's on that same wavelength.
Yeah. Yeah. you can have your plan of what you want to do, but if you're able just to open up and go with that flow, then that's how the universe speaks through us and experiences itself through us.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, what is the website? What is the Cape Center for Spiritual Living Cape Coral website?
Okay, so it's the letters CSL for Center for Spiritual Living. So cslcapecoral.org.
Awesome. And they
Yeah.
can find out more about your center there.
Yes.
And
Yep.
they can, and then of course you've got the YouTube channel, and I'll put a link to that as well. Uh, I'm sure if somebody just types Center for Spiritual Living Cape Coral on YouTube, they'll probably come find it as well.
Yep, yep, absolutely. And yeah, and we're on Facebook, and I think there's an Instagram, but nobody's really maintaining that one as much as I know. But I know sometimes there's really Melissa Tuff is one that runs a lot of our things, and so she's doing a TikTok and a Facebook as well, and we have a Facebook community too where people can post questions and all of that. I'd like to see it become more active, and it's also me trying to prioritize like where am I able to put my time today, and so that's kind of
Sure,
one of the hurdles, and so again, letting go and just letting be what it is.
absolutely.
Uh,
And you shared Melissa Tuff, and she's speaking this Sunday, right?
yeah, yeah, she's our guest speaker this Sunday, so look at that. Yep.
Awesome.
Good catch, Ron.
Awesome, exciting. I'm gonna be watching her. So that's
Yeah.
cool. And of course, to our audience, anytime you want to listen to one of Reverend Chris's messages, they're amazing. They're beautiful. Of course, it's wrapped in, of course, the whole program is there from the meditation, the 15-minute meditation beforehand, as well as the Big Love Band, as well as the reading, and of course wrapped in there with the message. So I'm so excited that you're able to get on this morning, Chris. And any final last words or anything else you would like to share with the audience?
Mm. The when I had, my awakening, that experience that shifted everything for me in my life, when I came out of it, the thing itself is how, Ernest Holmes refers to that thing a lot. What it left me with was just this really strong impression. One, like I just knew, I just had this knowing that everything's gonna be okay. It's all gonna
Mhm.
be okay. Like yes, we're in this physical existence, but nobody gets out alive. We know that.
Yeah.
And so we know it's just a temporary experience.
Mm.
Um, but I know, like it showed me without a doubt that yeah, we go on. Our
Yeah.
essence is big and it never will cease to be. There's nothing that can take away from it, nothing that can add to it. So just knowing, that everything's going to be okay. But the final thing that the universe, like left me with was that we are all one. Truly. Like we are all just one giant thing.
Mm.
One mind, one life, one consciousness, one physical presence, if you want to, look at the universe in that way. So it left me with that we are all one, and then love is all that matters. And
Mm.
it's love with, bigger than any like romantic love or like even unconditional love that like you might have for a child or a pet or something. It's even bigger. It's the force that keeps everything together, holds it all together. It creates, it rotates the galaxies, it breathes our heart. It's just love with a capital L. So we are all one, and love is all that matters. That's it.
Sounds like a Beatles song.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like they've definitely hit those points before.
Yeah.
I
No,
think it was I think it was their experience, over in the ashrams in India that and some psychedelics that opened them up, that there's no doubt that they were channeling divine information.
yes. No, absolutely. Absolutely. I love their music. And so, well, thank you once again, Reverend Chris Laif. It's been amazing to have you on the show, and we'll bring you back because this is good content, and yeah, I'm super excited to get this message out to everyone, and to those that are out there. If you are in the Cape Coral area, please visit the center. It's right off of 46th Avenue in Cape Coral.
But Southeast 24th Avenue.
24th Avenue. Okay. Glad
Yep.
for that clarification. I'll put the address down below. And if you're online, you can watch through YouTube. And if you are curious and you're in a different part of the world and maybe there's a center near you, I believe it's csl.org, and there's a
Yeah,
map on that website, and they could find some center that might be close to their city. So
yeah, absolutely.
thank you again, Reverend Chris.
No, thank you, Ron. Truly, it was a pleasure. I love doing this. So thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.